Prince Juma of Tanzania sat restlessly in his chambers, gazing out over the lush green expanse of his kingdom. His father, King Mwamba, had always ruled with wisdom, but the kingdom was now in turmoil. Crops failed, rivers dried up, and the people were beginning to panic. Rumors had spread of a powerful curse placed upon the land. It was said that the Water Goddess Nguvumali had been offended, and now her wrath was ravaging the kingdom. Juma had heard the stories since childhood, but he never thought the curse would touch his own family. The fateful day came when a mysterious figure appeared before the royal family. The elder seer, Makena, arrived with disturbing news. She explained that the curse was not random, it was a punishment for Prince Juma himself. Years ago, when he was a child, he had unknowingly taken a sacred artifact from a river sacred to Nguvumali. The artifact, a crystal imbued with the goddess's power, had been meant for a sacred ritual, but young Juma had found it and played with it, unaware of the damage it would cause. The goddess, furious at the desecration, had cast a curse upon the kingdom. The only way to lift the curse, Makena revealed, was for Juma to journey across the mighty Lake Tanganyika and find the daughter of Nguvumali, a mermaid named Lishana. She was the goddess's only heir, and it was said that only a union with her could break the curse. But Lishana was no ordinary mermaid, she was elusive, and her heart was rumored to be as turbulent as the waters she inhabited. Juma's mission was clear, but the journey would be fraught with peril. His mind raced with uncertainty as the fate of his people rested in his hands. Prince Juma's heart pounded as he set foot on the shores of Lake Tanganyika. The lake, known for its treacherous currents and deep waters, stretched endlessly before him. He had been raised with stories of the lake's power, its mystical creatures, and the hidden dangers beneath its surface. The path ahead was uncertain, and yet Juma felt a deep sense of duty and determination. The people of his kingdom were suffering, and his family's legacy was at risk. He had no choice but to face what lay beyond the shore. Makena had warned him that the journey would be dangerous, and that there were forces beyond his control that might try to stop him. He was not alone in his quest, dark entities, sent by the water goddess herself, would try to thwart him at every turn. But Juma was resolute. As he boarded a sturdy boat, his loyal captain, Zuri, an experienced sailor, guided the way. The water was choppy, and the wind seemed to howl against their voyage. Yet Juma felt the weight of his duty pushing him forward. The curse of the water goddess had left an indelible mark on the land, and he could feel the tension in the air. As they sailed deeper into the lake, strange occurrences began to unsettle the prince. The once clear waters began to cloud, and shadows danced beneath the surface. Zuri spoke little, his face pale, but his eyes constantly searched the water. "The lake does not welcome strangers," Zuri muttered under his breath. Juma's unease grew as the boat rocked violently, the water rippling unnaturally. From the depths, a low, resonating sound echoed, a warning, or perhaps a summons. The nightfall was near, and Juma had not yet seen the mermaid, Lishana. But the tales Makena had shared weighed heavily on his mind. Lishana was said to be as beautiful as she was fierce. Her long, flowing hair was the color of midnight, and her eyes were the hue of the deep sea. But she was also a creature of the water, wild and untamed, and only a heart pure enough could sway her. The prince knew that he had no time to waste, but as the night descended, the lake seemed to become a living thing, full of danger and mystery. The next morning, the waters of Lake Tanganyika were calm, but Juma's mind was far from at ease. The boat had traveled deep into the lake overnight, and as the sun rose, they found themselves in a remote part of the lake, where the shoreline was sparse, and the air felt thick with magic. Zuri steered the boat into a narrow inlet, the waters growing darker as they approached. The trees that lined the banks of the inlet seemed to whisper in the wind, and the distant call of birds echoed strangely. "This is the heart of the lake," Zuri said, his voice hushed. "This is where the goddess's power is strongest." Juma nodded, steeling himself for what lay ahead. As the boat crept forward, the surface of the water began to ripple. At first, he thought it was the wind, but then he saw it, a large, silvery tail splashing through the water. His heart quickened. Was this Lishana? Without warning, the surface of the lake erupted in a violent burst of water. A massive creature, unlike anything Juma had ever seen, rose from the depths, and its eyes glowed an eerie, otherworldly green. The creature spoke in a voice that seemed to reverberate through the water. "Prince Juma," it intoned, "you have come for the mermaid, but you must first prove your worth." The creature's words sent a chill down Juma's spine. It was no mere sea creature, it was a guardian of the lake, and it would not let him pass without a test. "What do you want from me?" Juma demanded, standing tall despite the rising fear inside him. The creature's eyes fixed on him, and it smiled a sinister grin. "A test of courage," it said. "Dive into the water and retrieve the pearl of the lake. Only then may you seek the mermaid." Juma hesitated. The water was deep, dark, and filled with unknown dangers. But he knew he had no choice. His kingdom depended on his success, and the curse would continue to ravage his people unless he succeeded. With a deep breath, he dove into the water, determined to face whatever lay beneath the surface. The moment Juma entered the water, he was consumed by its cold embrace. The water was dark, and he could barely see more than a few inches in front of him. Strange, luminous shapes swam in the distance, casting eerie glows as they passed. Juma's heart raced, and his breath quickened as he swam deeper into the abyss, following the faint glow of a distant object. It was the pearl, the prize that would allow him to continue his journey. But as he descended, the water around him grew colder, and the pressure intensified. He felt something watching him, something ancient and powerful. Suddenly, he felt a sharp tug at his leg, and before he could react, something wrapped tightly around his ankle. Panic gripped him as he tried to free himself, but the more he struggled, the tighter the grip became. His eyes darted around, trying to locate whatever had ensnared him. It was then that he saw it, a serpent, its body coiling around his leg, its head rising from the depths, glowing with a malevolent light. Its eyes were the color of emeralds, and its mouth was filled with sharp, glistening teeth. Juma fought with all his strength, but the serpent's hold was relentless. The weight of the water, the crushing pressure, and the dark, cold silence of the lake made him feel as though he was suffocating. But in that moment, a voice, a soft, melodic voice, whispered from the depths. It was a voice unlike any he had heard before. "Let go of him," the voice commanded. "You test him no more." The serpent released its hold, retreating into the shadows. Juma gasped for air, swimming towards the glowing pearl. As he reached out to grab it, he felt a surge of energy, and the pressure around him lifted. He was free. The pearl was his. But the voice spoke again, this time closer. "Do not think this was your victory alone, Prince Juma," the voice said, as the water parted before him, revealing a figure from the depths. A mermaid, her hair flowing like liquid silver, her eyes filled with ancient wisdom. Lishana. Juma gazed in awe at the mermaid before him. She was more beautiful than he had imagined, her skin shimmering with the radiance of the lake itself. Her long, flowing hair trailed behind her like a silver river, and her eyes gleamed with the wisdom of ages. Despite her beauty, there was something wild and untamed about her, something that reminded him of the dangers of the deep waters that surrounded them. "You have passed the test," Lishana said, her voice both melodic and commanding. "But the curse cannot be broken so easily." Juma's heart sank as he realized the gravity of his situation. "What do I need to do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. Lishana's gaze softened. "You must prove yourself worthy of my hand," she said, her eyes locking with his. "Not through strength, but through understanding and respect for the powers that govern this land. Only then will the curse be lifted, and your kingdom freed." Juma nodded, understanding the weight of her words. His journey had only just begun, and the trials he would face would test more than his courage, they would test his very soul. Lishana's gaze pierced through Juma like a mirror reflecting his deepest fears. He had journeyed far to find her, and now that he stood before her, the weight of his kingdom's suffering seemed to press down on him with an unbearable force. Yet, there was a calmness to the mermaid, an unspoken authority in her presence that made the prince feel small. "You seek to lift the curse that plagues your kingdom," she said softly, her voice echoing in the still waters. "But the price of my aid is not one you can take lightly. To win my heart, you must first show your heart is pure and capable of love, a love that transcends mortal limits. Only then can you break the curse." Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and lightning cracked through the air. Waves crashed violently against the boat, and Juma could barely see beyond the chaos of the storm. In the midst of it all, he saw Zuri, struggling to keep the boat steady. The captain was clearly exhausted, and the storm's fury threatened to tear them apart. Without thinking, Juma took control of the boat, steering them into the heart of the storm. His instincts told him that they needed to ride the waves, not flee from them. Together, Juma and Zuri fought against the storm, their loyalty to one another and their shared goal guiding them through the chaos. With every wave that threatened to capsize them, Juma pushed forward, refusing to give up. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the storm subsided, and the lake calmed. The trial had been passed, and Juma felt a surge of pride and gratitude for Zuri's loyalty. But as he looked around, he realized that the storm had not only tested his loyalty to his people, it had tested his loyalty to himself. The journey ahead was still fraught with challenges, but Juma now understood that loyalty, both to others and to one's own values, was the key to overcoming them. The trials continued, each more difficult than the last. After overcoming the storms, Juma and Zuri reached the edge of a dark, mystical forest. This was the place where the final trial would take place, the trial of sacrifice. Here, Juma would be forced to make a choice between his kingdom and his personal desires. They entered the forest, which seemed to come alive with whispers. Strange lights flickered in the distance, and the air was thick with magic. It was here, in the heart of this dark place, that Juma would face his greatest test. "You have come far, Prince," a voice echoed from the shadows. "But to claim what you seek, you must be willing to sacrifice that which you hold most dear." Juma's heart raced. The words struck deep within him. What would he have to give up? His kingdom? His family? Or perhaps something more personal, something that defined him as a prince and as a man? He ventured deeper into the forest, following the eerie glow of the lights. As he moved through the darkness, he saw a vision, his people, suffering, dying, caught in the endless drought caused by the curse. The weight of his responsibility pressed down on him harder than ever. Then, another vision appeared, a glimpse of his future with Lishana. The mermaid, radiant and free, held out her hand to him. But in this vision, Juma realized, there was no place for his kingdom. To be with Lishana would mean abandoning his royal duties, leaving his people to fend for themselves. The choice was before him, his kingdom or his heart's desire. And as the forest seemed to close in on him, Juma understood the gravity of sacrifice. The true test would be not in what he gained, but in what he was willing to lose. Juma stood frozen in the heart of the forest, his mind racing. The visions before him were clear and undeniable, the future of his people and his own desires, placed side by side. In one vision, he saw his kingdom free of the curse, the land blooming with prosperity again, his people thriving and celebrating under the reign of his father. Yet, in the other vision, Lishana stood before him, offering him the freedom of her love, a life untethered by duty or burden. The contrast was stark, and Juma's chest tightened as he struggled to reconcile these two paths. "Choose, Prince," the voice echoed, dark and insistent. "What do you hold dear? Your kingdom, your legacy, or the heart of a mermaid?" Juma's thoughts swirled in a maelstrom of conflict. His people, his family, and the history of his lineage were all bound to the kingdom. They had given so much, sacrificed so much, for the prosperity of the land. Yet, as he gazed into Lishana's vision, He felt a pull in his heart, a longing for something beyond the throne, beyond the responsibility that had weighed so heavily on him all his life. The wind whispered through the trees, urging him to make his choice. Juma closed his eyes, letting the calmness of the moment settle in. He understood now that the trial was not just about choosing between his people and his love, it was about understanding the true nature of sacrifice. The sacrifice was not in abandoning one for the other but in recognizing that his heart could hold both, and that true leadership required him to give of himself, not in a grand gesture, but in quiet, unwavering dedication to both his kingdom and his own happiness. "I will sacrifice my own desires," Juma said firmly, his voice steady despite the weight of his decision. "My people, my kingdom, are the ones who need me most. And I will carry this responsibility for as long as I live." The vision of Lishana dimmed, and the forest seemed to relax, the oppressive tension lifting from the air. His mind swirling with thoughts of his people, his family, and his kingdom. "I will do whatever it takes, Lishana. I have no time to waste. My people suffer while I stand here, talking. How can I prove my worth?" Lishana studied him for a moment, as if evaluating the sincerity of his words. "Your journey has only just begun, Prince. You must face the trials of the lake and the trials within yourself. Only when you have demonstrated your true understanding of sacrifice, loyalty, and compassion will you be deemed worthy of the gift I can offer." The mermaid's words were cryptic, but Juma understood that his journey would not be completed simply by winning her favor. He was about to embark on a series of trials that would challenge him not only as a prince but as a human being. His heart had been hardened by duty and the weight of his position, but to lift the curse, he would need to rediscover his humanity. "You are free to go now," Lishana said, her voice soft but filled with an undeniable power. "But remember this, the path ahead will be filled with dangers that will test your resolve. Do not let them break you." With a final look at the mermaid, Juma turned and swam back toward the surface, his mind swirling with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Juma's journey took him to the heart of the lake, to a hidden island said to be the home of the first spirit of water. The island was a place of eternal mist, where time seemed to stand still. As his boat approached the shore, he could feel the presence of ancient forces watching him, waiting for him to make the next move. Zuri, who had remained steadfastly by his side, rode with a sense of foreboding. "There is no turning back now, Prince," Zuri said, his voice strained. "This is the trial of compassion. The first test to see if your heart is worthy." The island was covered in dense jungle, and the air was thick with the scent of tropical flowers and the sound of unseen creatures. They disembarked and ventured deeper into the island, guided only by the whispering of the wind. It wasn't long before they came upon a clearing, where an old woman sat, hunched over a stone well. Her clothes were tattered, and her face was gaunt, as though she had been waiting for someone for centuries. "Do you seek to pass this trial?" the old woman asked, her voice rasping but filled with a strange power. Juma nodded. "I do. What must I do?" The old woman's eyes gleamed with an unsettling light. "You must give of yourself. You must help me retrieve the sacred water from the heart of the jungle. Only when you do so can you prove that you are capable of true compassion beyond your own desire to save your kingdom." Juma felt a knot form in his stomach. The journey was difficult, but it was clear that the real challenge lay ahead. He had to demonstrate that he was willing to put aside his own suffering for the sake of another. But the jungle was wild and untamed, full of dangers that even the bravest of men feared. As they ventured further into the jungle, the obstacles seemed to grow more intense. Thorns tore at his skin, and strange creatures watched from the shadows. But Juma did not falter. He helped the old woman navigate the jungle's dense undergrowth, his heart heavy with the realization that compassion could be the key to lifting the curse. For the first time on his journey, he began to understand that the curse wasn't just an external force, it was a reflection of his own inability to connect with others on a deeper level. Finally, after what felt like hours, they arrived at a hidden spring. The water was crystal clear, glistening under the sunlight that managed to break through the thick canopy above. The old woman dipped a small vessel into the water and handed it to Juma. "You have passed the first trial," she said, her voice softer now. "But remember, the true test is not what you give, but why you give it. Do not forget that in your quest for redemption." Juma nodded, understanding her words. His heart had opened to the possibility of selflessness, but the journey was far from over. The second trial was more grueling. After leaving the jungle island behind, Juma and Zuri sailed further into the lake, guided by the whispers of the water spirits. They came upon a desolate, wind-swept island, where the air was thick with the smell of salt and seaweed. The trial of loyalty, Juma soon learned, would take him into the heart of a storm. "This is the trial of loyalty," Zuri said, his face grim. "You will have to prove your dedication not only to your kingdom but to those who serve you. The water spirits will test you with a fierce storm. How you respond will determine your fate." Juma took a deep breath. He knew that loyalty was an integral part of leadership. He had always believed in the strength of his people, but could he truly be loyal to them in the face of overwhelming danger? The answer, he realized, lay in his clarity wash over him. His choice was not a rejection of love, but a pledge to honor both the duties of his heart and his people. The forest before him shifted, its dark shadows receding as the spirit of the trial acknowledged his decision. "You have passed the trial of sacrifice, Prince Juma," the voice said, this time filled with approval. "Your heart is pure, and your soul has shown true leadership." Juma felt a wave of relief wash over him. But the voice warned him one final time. "Remember, true sacrifice is not always easy. The path ahead will still test you, and you will be called upon to give more than you have already." He nodded, understanding the weight of the journey ahead. With this trial completed, he had grown, his heart had expanded, embracing both his duty and his desires. There was more to learn, but he had taken a crucial step toward the person he needed to become. With the final trial completed, Juma felt his purpose clear. He had passed the tests of compassion, loyalty, and sacrifice, and now, he had earned the right to face Lishana. The last trial had revealed that to break the curse, he did not need to choose between his kingdom and his love, rather, he had to prove his worthiness to both. His commitment to his kingdom was now solidified, and his heart, though burdened with responsibility, was open to the possibility of love. Returning to the lake, Juma felt a sense of resolve. Zuri had been a loyal companion throughout the journey, and now they were about to face the final chapter of this great trial. As they approached the waters where Juma had first encountered Lishana, he felt the pull of her presence, a force more powerful than the lake's currents, more ancient than the kingdom's history. She was near. The boat slid silently across the water, the air still and thick with expectation. The surface of the lake shimmered as if it were waiting for him to make the final leap. When Juma reached the spot where he had first seen Lishana, the waters began to swirl, and her figure emerged from the depths like a vision of both beauty and danger. Her long silver hair trailed behind her like a comet's tail, and her eyes, the color of deep ocean waves, fixed on him with an intensity that made his heart race. "You have passed all the trials," Lishana said, her voice soft but powerful, carrying the weight of the lake itself. "But there is one last thing you must do. You must prove that you can love both your people and me. The curse will not break until you give all of yourself, without hesitation, to the responsibilities you have and to the love that you have found." Juma stepped closer, his heart beating fast. "I understand," he said. "I cannot serve both without a commitment that transcends what I once thought I knew. I will love my people as I love myself, and I will love you with all that I am. Only then will the curse end." Lishana gazed at him with a mixture of admiration and sadness. She had seen many like him, men driven by duty and ambition. But Juma was different. His journey had transformed him from a prince who ruled with a heavy hand to one who understood the true meaning of leadership, love, sacrifice, and compassion. "You are ready," she whispered, and the lake responded, its waters rippling as the curse began to lift. The dark clouds that had hung over the kingdom for so long began to dissipate, and the sun pierced through the sky, bringing light to the once dying lands. The kingdom, now free from the curse, celebrated in joy as crops flourished and the rivers flowed once again. The people rejoiced, their cries of happiness echoing through the land as the once parched earth came alive with green. Juma stood at the center of it all, watching as his kingdom blossomed. But there was one final task, one final promise, to fulfill. Juma's heart still ached as he thought of Lishana, who had agreed to marry him, but only under the condition that he fully embraced his new role as both a prince and a husband. The mermaid, his beloved, was not bound by mortal land. She was a creature of the water, and her heart was wild, untamable. Yet Juma had proven his worth, and now it was time to unite the waters and the land in a union that would forever alter the fate of both. The wedding was to be held on the shores of Lake Tanganyika, the very waters where Juma had once faced trials. The air was thick with anticipation as the people gathered, not only from Juma's kingdom but from the surrounding lands as well. They came to witness the union of a prince and a mermaid, a marriage that would seal the peace between the realms of water and earth. Juma stood at the water's edge, his heart pounding with both fear and excitement. From the depths, Lishana emerged, more beautiful than he had ever imagined. Her long silver hair flowed like liquid moonlight, and her eyes held the wisdom of the ages. She was not of this world, yet she was the one who had chosen him, for no words were needed between them. The lake itself witnessed their promise, and as they stood together, the waters and the land seemed to hum with life, united in their love. The curse had been broken, not through a battle or a sacrifice of life, but through the melding of two worlds, one of water and one of earth. Juma and Lishana were wed beneath the eternal sky, their love as deep as the lake that had brought them together. The kingdom flourished, and their reign would be marked by peace, prosperity, and the everlasting bond between the land and the waters. And thus, the curse was lifted, not through bloodshed or fear, but through love's transformative power. In the years that followed, Prince Juma and Queen Lishana ruled together, their kingdom growing stronger each day. The lake, once a place of terror and mystery, had become a symbol of unity between the earth and the water. The curse was a distant memory, and the people, now living in harmony with the natural world, flourished under the wise leadership of their king and queen. Their love story became legend, a tale of sacrifice, loyalty, and the power of love to heal the deepest wounds. And as for Juma, he understood that the greatest strength of all was not found in the throne or the crown, but in the love that transcended the boundaries of the earth and the sea. Together, he and Lishana had broken the curse, and in doing so, they had created a kingdom that would endure for generations to come.